Content warning. This episode contains depictions of self-harm. You're listening to All My Friends Are Ghosts, a long-form narrative drama told in 14 parts. Episode 1, The Ferry. When the vessel pushes off from the platform, the sky is heavy with that elusive golden glow. Soft light of the early evening sun playing off the textures of the bay. Everything is still. The ferryman stands at the bow, looking back and forth from the landing toward the prison ahead. His skin is dark, his beard mostly white, a face full of history and focus. The ferry is almost entirely empty. The woman who tends bar is sitting in the cabin, reading the newspaper, and Simon is sitting portside on the upper level, purposefully close to the bar, purposefully far from the stairwell. He sits upright, unblinking, dazed looking, the fair skin of his face roughed with salt and pepper stubble. He puts his earbuds in, glances down at his phone, and increases the volume, having timed it so the nostalgic whine of the organ starts buzzing around his brain just as the boat nears San Quentin. Outside the window, there's a crew team rowing between the ferry and the shore. In an hour, it will be as dark as it gets in that little cove. Only the lights of the prison yard reflected in the calm blue black. But for now, he's staring through that golden glow, his face showing contemplation of a smile. He watches the ferryman survey the almost motionless water, thinks how if it were a Saturday, the ferry would be full. He's thankful it's not a Saturday. The ferryman crosses the bow, checking their marks, noting the wake. Simon looks off onto the basketball courts, track and utility buildings of the prison, their dull gray inhabitants shambling. He always thinks the same thing about being lucky to not have accidentally wound up like all those men shuffling around on the blacktops. Then he wonders what he might have done in his life that would have landed him in such a place. Then he reminds himself he hasn't done anything in his life. With his life. On the chest-high table in front of him sits a thick navy blue book and 2 sweating beer bottles. He slugs down the second half of the first beer in a gulp, pushes it aside, and returns his focus to the ferryman, the passing prison, the coming waters of the bay. In time, a certain nameless something catches his attention in the song, the texture of the organ, the wash of the cymbals. His gaze shifts forward, out into nothing, as the ferryman comes in from the bow, secures the doors behind him, and proceeds somewhere unseen. The ferry's clip quickens as the cove opens into the bay, and soon they're in an altogether different rhythm. A new sort of calm. They're sitting in a small Thai restaurant in the lower Haight, in the very back next to the kitchen. Simon is staring into the kitchen, glassy-eyed, hypnotized by the women taming flames and jostling woks. Peter's voice is just part of the undefined rumble of the room, another dull sound pulsating from the spectra of paper lanterns in Simon's periphery until his attention wanders back and he speaks.
I tried to cry again on the ferry today.
Dude, Jesus. Have you been listening to that weird Beach Boys album again?
No, it's not that. Yeah, I have been listening to that again. But it's not even an album. It's just a mix I made from, random studio outtakes and rarities and stuff.
His older brother stares blankly at him, a lifetime of tolerating his eccentricities behind it all. They sit in silence. Simon finishes his drink.
Why'd they even release all those weird-ass studio outtakes? And where would you even find that kind of thing?
That's not what I'm talking about.
No, I know. But, are they trying to make people go insane?
Simon watches him with more puzzlement than contempt, despite what his face may convey.
It's not healthy to be wandering around all day with songs about root beer and astral projection and acid trips or whatever blasting in your earbuds.
That's not the point. We're totally losing the point.
Pat CU? Duck fried rice? Another beer, sir?
Yeah. 2 of these, please. Thank you.
I'll get that right out.
Okay, so what is the point?
I don't know.
They sit in silence again. Peter begins eating. Simon takes the lid off the container of fish sauce to his left and begins spooning the Thai chilies out over his rice. The waitress sets a beer down in front of each of the brothers, and Simon reaches out, sliding them both next to his plate. He sips long and deep on the first. He isn't even hungry anymore.
He's not coming back.
I know.
They both have their mouths full when she walks by the table again, asking how everything is. The brothers nod smilingly and put their heads back down.
God damn it. Now I need to hear Don't Worry Baby, immediately.
Yeah.
He used to slap at his hands when he'd see him scratching at his hangnails. They'd be wrapped up together on the pallet on the floor, listening to NPR or reading to one another. And when Simon's mind would wander, he'd instinctively start scratching at the sides of his fingertips. Sometimes he didn't even realize he was doing it. The boy he loved would reach up and slap at his hands playfully and draw them into his chest and nuzzle them. It would start them both smiling. When they would decide to go out for lunch, the boy would always ask to walk on the sunny side of the street. They'd cross mid-block, and the boy would quicken his last few steps to jump the curb, skip ahead, turn, and pull himself into Simon's enamored embrace. It was the real thing, he thought, and he had it bad. All summer they drank and smoked and talked and laughed late into the night while the neighbors played their banda music and added to the towering pile of cheap light beer cans on their fire escape, and a gigantic royal palm swayed just outside the window watching over them. Almost every night he would wake and stand in the kitchen and smoke, and drink a sad glass of Irish whiskey while the boy slept like the dead. When he was done, he would walk back into the room and look down at the pale, soft body before him and feel weird and grateful. And then he would crawl back into bed and embrace his love. Some nights the boy would also wake and ask Simon to describe the dreams that shook him from sleep. He would light a cigarette and tell him about a menacing, recurring dream he'd had since he was 5, or the dreams that came a few years later with severe fever and had never really left, and how he was never the same again. He said he couldn't tell what was dream and what was memory anymore. He'd tell him about walking the unlit streets of the neighborhood as a boy, and how the back of his neck would bristle and tighten with every approaching set of headlights. He would tell him what it was like to fall in love twice a week at the age of 9, and how he could remember every one of their faces and every one of their names, and how their sweaters had smelled and who their favorite singer was. He'd tell him about holidays and other places, and about his grandfather and what a hard worker he was, and how he never had to ask any man for anything. First kisses and false starts, little hidden secrets, shame, and the regret of not ever being able to go back. On one such night, he even cried, and the boy told him it was beautiful. He wiped his eyes and took a drag off his cigarette and stubbed it out in a shot glass that was sitting on the floor by the pallet. He shifted his body and wrapped himself with the boy's arm and said,
"If I believed in anything, I would believe that you were a gift."
The difference is I'm not afraid of death.
Nobody was even talking about that.
No, you were, though.
No,
No,
I wasn't. I wasn't.
As the two pause to catch their breath, Peter sinks back into the cushy booth, eyes wandering the scene in search of anything besides his brother sitting across from him, hands shaped around a beer as if in prayer. They only see each other over meals now.
Look, you're talking about life. My life, your kids, and my... whatever it is you think my version of children would be, I guess.
You made me out to be some, I'm not like Mom and Dad. I don't care about your... I mean, you know what I mean. It's just that you and I, we're not that different.
Simon feels the back of his neck tighten, and a rush of frustrated blood spread through his head. A huge, eerie feeling in that taut silence. A flood of hyper-awareness. Everything becoming fuzzy and narrowing around him.
That was a breech birth.
Peter forces his gaze onto the television behind the bar over Simon's shoulder as his brother finishes his drink and signals to the waitress for another. He doesn't know what to say, so he doesn't say anything.
I came to Earth feet first. So I guess I wasn't afraid of birth either.
Peter turns his head, locks eyes with his brother while holding the same disaffected gaze with which he'd been watching whatever blur of nonsense flashed around the television.
Look, I came to Earth feet first because I was ready to do this thing and get it over with.
You don't know what you're talking about.
I know your patience is running out. I know I'm not what I used to be.
No, Simon, don't.
Or, I mean, I'm not what I was. I'm not where I want to be.
Where do you want to be?
I don't know.
And he really didn't. At least not in the way Peter had wanted him to.
Look, I'll do anything I can to help you right now. But I just don't know what you need. Or what you even want. I don't know why you do that to yourself.
He was gesturing toward the palm-sized patchwork of newly healing cuts on Simon's left forearm with a measured tilt of his head. Simon pulled his sleeve down.
You make me feel like a 14-year-old when you talk about it. Like I'm needing you to save me from myself. Like your mom or something.
No, Mom wouldn't even have mentioned it, for fear of you giving her the silent treatment for a year. If that's how you remember her, I guess that explains why you never talk about her anymore.
See, this is what I mean. It's so unfair and, like, I don't know, dictatorial of you to even bring that up. I think about her all the time. I think of her, and I talk to her, and
how would I even know that, Simon? I'm not a mind reader. I only know what I see, and I see you spiraling with this stuff, with the drinking, with the pills, whatever this cutting yourself stuff is about.
I'm not afraid of death.
Yeah, I don't want to hear that. I don't know why you would even want to tell me that, but I don't want to hear it. What am I supposed to say to that? Congratulations, Simon. I've got my own life and my own problems. Between the restaurant opening and Wendy and the kids, I never have a minute to myself. And believe it or not, I too have some rich interior life or whatever. I feel every second of it all. I'm not some automaton.
I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry. Just tell me what the hell's going on with you.
I don't know what's going on with me.
Okay.
Or with anything.
So then, what's all this stuff about death? Or not fearing death?
I'm just saying I don't fear it.
Okay, so why are you so depressed all the time? Why are you always welling up out of nowhere? Why are you always in this funk about everything?
I don't know. I'm not trying to be a burden.
Oh my God. I just need to hear from you what you want. What are you looking for? What it is you're feeling? Something.
Not everybody is like you, Peter. Sometimes I don't have any idea how to say what it is I feel because it doesn't have a name. Sometimes it's just as vague as it is potent. I don't know.
Why do you say you don't fear death?
Because I know how I die.
He pulled his favorite album out of the milk crate full of records, removed the disc, and cued the needle to the groove where the last song of side 2 started, and he let the cartridge hover there while the record rotated below it, untouched. He'd been mulling over little parts of the plan in his downtime. He'd be on the bus, half watching the blur of the neighborhood fly by, sorting out the specifics of each method he was considering, even though he knew when the time came he would likely just pick whichever one seemed most convenient at the moment. The guy who'd been renting the room before him was obsessed with working out. There were still copies of fitness magazines in the shared bathroom. Still large, unopened plastic tubs of whey protein and fish oil supplements in the storage space on the ground floor. He had installed an odd-looking, double-handled pull-up bar in the doorway. The only window in the room had an expansive view down Masonic through the Panhandle and everything that came after it northward until the street crested just past the University of San Francisco. Simon slept with the window open, and when the neighborhood got quiet in the hours just after midnight, he could hear the foghorn from the bridge sing its warning through the night. He stood looking out the window from the doorway, dressed in whatever he was wearing, unceremonious and unassuming. He began to prepare by securing a length of parachute cord he'd found in the closet to each handle of the pull-up bar at the top of the doorway. He then checked the loops dangling distance from the ground and readjusted the knots and pulled them tight. He stepped forward and dropped the tone arm on the turntable. He stepped back. He twisted the cord into a smaller loop slightly larger than his head, then straightened it around his throat. He thought about the chances of it working. He thought about the strength of the pull-up bar and the elasticity of the cord. Then he withdrew his head from the loop and twisted the cord several more times to decrease the length. He bent down and untied his shoes and took them off to shorten his height. He glanced over at the notebook on the desk and realized it was the first time he'd considered leaving a note. He didn't consider it for long. He knew that if he had, he wouldn't have gone through with it. He rewrapped his neck and lowered himself, not with a jerk, but gingerly to ease his way into his last conscious moments with purpose and resolve. He let his ankles buckle and slowly felt his feet give way and his shins brush the carpet. He was really doing it. He felt a rush of blood through his ears and temples. He felt the back of his neck tighten. He felt the twisted cord tighten into a knot. He choked a bit and skittered momentarily, and thought about the man he rented from finding him, and he felt bad for him. He wondered if it would have been better to leave a note on the front door telling him not to come in, or if he should have just called the police first and left the doors open for them to avoid inconveniencing him altogether. He didn't look out the window at all. He just kept staring at the books and records in boxes next to the bed. The sounds of the piano and guitars were lovely. The longer he dangled, the more enchanting the melody became, until all sound and light started sputtering and dropping in and out in flashes of robotic psychedelia. He was relaxing. He was fading, the length of the hitch taut and slowly twisting. He thought about Peter. The pull-up bar ripped out of the door jamb with enough force to render him unconscious when it struck the back of his head. When he awoke, the record player was repeating a dry rhythm, accented with snapping thumps. His eyes hurt, his ears were ringing, and everything seemed electric. He never told anyone about it.
People want to have you believe that art is always a good thing. Like, everybody should just go around expressing the hell out of themselves at all times. A flowery metaphor for every life lesson, a heartfelt sonnet for every goddamn sunset. some girl turns them on and they crap out some boring new love song as if we needed another one. My sincere apologies to Sir Paul McCartney. I wish I could punch every person who claims to be an artist squarely in the face. Okay, maybe not every person who claims to be an artist. Not the young, bewildered, jaded beyond their years teenagers, but like the fully grown, pretentious loungeabouts who spend the day smoking pot and lying around in the park, talking about painters and crappy 6th generation Arcade Fire ripoff bands just to make some pretty strangers find them interesting. Those guys are all getting punched in the face. Dad made sure we knew what real art was. Everybody was either a phony or a poser or the real deal. There wasn't a fourth option. Anytime we'd come home with some record or try to get him to buy us one at the mall, he was just this storm of groans and insults. When I think back on it, I kind of wish some sober-minded time traveler could walk into frame and remind him that we were just children and it was completely normal for us to have all but exclusively awful taste in music. But then I remember all my friends and their utterly uninteresting parents, and I pull the reins back in a little. I know I've said it before, but it always bothered me to have the fun dad back then, even though I can see now where it helped me form my own opinions about things. I mean, other people's folks were making them watch Billy Graham and Jay Leno. Dad was steeping us in the study of George Carlin and Bill Hicks and Andy Kaufman, The Clash, the Pixies, the Replacements. By the time I was old enough to look around and see that most people just chose some off-the-shelf personality to squeeze themselves into, I was already too much of a contrarian to make it work. Not that I wanted any part of it by that point. I don't know if having that kind of parent was good for me, like, at all, but I still love him. You don't have to understand someone to love them. Peter, for example. Listen, I love Peter, and no, it's not one of those things where you begrudgingly love someone in spite of themselves, or just because you're blood or whatever. I feel deeply connected to him, but I have no idea how he lives. I mean, I actually have no clue how he stays alive. It's like we came from the same two people and were raised together and everything, but somehow he's just this straight-jacketed rule book of a man with no intention of establishing an intention, I guess. I mean, I feel like he just plain exists and merely changes himself to suit wherever he ends up, and I just can't understand being that way. I guess we were given different things all our lives. I mean, you could look at our interests and our natures and make some broad, sweeping conclusions about how we were parented and about us as individuals and about how we both turned out, but you'd still be missing the point. I just wasn't given what Peter was given, and he wasn't given what I was given. It's just that simple. Where I got emotional support and creative discipline, he was left with regimented routines and schedules and consequences. But maybe he made it that way. Maybe he shaped the way he was raised by just being himself. Maybe it's just in his nature to will his surroundings to conform to his will. I mean, the guy's a machine. I don't know. Maybe it isn't that simple. But everybody is born a certain way. I know that much to be true. Maybe you're just who you are, and the way you're raised can only make you a little more or less of that. Or maybe you're just a fraction more of a clean slate than it looks to everyone looking in, and just having them look at you, just the sear of their eyes can make you start to perform for them and pervert everything that once felt natural to the math of your genes. And then eventually you're just on some other path. I think art can also be dangerous like that. I feel like, in particular, some songs can just alter you beyond repair. And some people should just leave them alone altogether. Nobody normal ever warns you about stuff like that, but they should. You've got to actively seek out the real weirdos for niche advice like that, I guess. Like, when I hear the Sandy Shaw version of I Don't Owe You Anything, I get this weird, impulsive, carpe diem sort of feeling. I remember hearing it in Dad's Oldsmobile on one of those old solid black cassette tapes with his childlike, all-caps, Sharpie scrawl of Mixer or AM/FM hits or whatever. Every time I hear that song, it brings me back to some vividly maudlin place I can't quite wrap words around. It's dark, and we're on some backcountry road with only the headlights illuminating the constant wisp and flicker of gnats and lightning bugs, and the rows of weeds line the edges of that beat concrete. And I get this rush of goosebumps that makes me feel like I should just walk away from whatever bums me out and just simplify and figure it out and be done with all the mental waste of modern living. It feels like if I just embraced that feeling, I could find some peace that would lead me somewhere that makes sense and calms my desire to be understood and fulfilled, and maybe then I wouldn't feel the need to understand anyone else. I can remember hearing Josie Cotton singing Johnny Are You Queer way back when Dad had the black Ford pickup. I mean, we were just kids. And I felt that same quiet, nervous exhilaration all bopping around with it in my head on the ride home, and coming into the house and running up to you asking, Mommy, what does queer mean? Never realizing there was baggage with the very word itself until you shot that glare at Dad and demanded to know what he'd been exposing us to. I feel like art is dangerous because it can trick you into thinking you've got a chance at doing things your own way in this world, a chance at being in control of whatever you just happen to be born to be. Even though I'm not a child and I'm so dug into these opinions and habits of mine, there are still people who use words and sounds and colors and shapes in ways that awake that delusional hopefulness in me. There are even words, just the way certain sounds combine that, when pushed through certain lips and certain teeth, still evoke that same sense of freedom in me.
All My Friends Are Ghosts is written and directed by Blake Cormier. Starring Blake Cormier as Simon, Joe Barton as Peter, Lauren Seal as the narrator, and additional voices by Leslie Seal. Original music and sound design by Blake Cormier. Additional field recordings by Karam Harmansi. More information about the production and all songs used in the show can be found at adoredbymillions.com.